Kia ora, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. May, thank you for inviting me along. I've been a public servant for about 20 years in about 6 different organisations, and all of them I've worked with May in some capacity or other, so it's good to be working with you in this one. Yes, I have the coolest job title in the public service, the Govt Chief Talent Officer. I'm pretty new to that role. I've been in it for about 3 months, and it's within the State Services Commission. For those of you who don't know, that's an agency which is really responsible for 2 important things. One is to employ the chief executives, and the other is to help drive reform across the whole system. And I'll talk a bit about the system, and I guess what I mean by that is not individual agencies working alone, being heroic, trying to solve problems, but it's about agencies working together and how they connect with each other, but importantly how they connect with the public. 2 things that I'll touch on, well not touch on, but really focus on is the role that not just me, but chief executives, leaders across the public service are playing now to try and develop people who aren't just strong leaders of particular agencies, but can lead at system level. And secondly, closely related to that, is the importance of having diversity at leadership levels throughout organisations. And that's diversity of background, but it's also diversity of perspective. And those 2 things I think are crucial if you are to have a public service that is able to respond to the needs of the people we serve in our increasingly diverse country. So a little bit about my role of Govt Chief Talent Officer. There's 3 things that I'm particularly focused on. The first is helping to grow and develop current leaders, but importantly the next generation of leaders in the public service. Secondly, and related to that, helping agencies better plan for their changing workforce needs in the future. Our society is changing radically, as we've heard. We need to make sure we have a public service that changes to match that. And then I have a 3rd role around Head of Profession for Human Resources Services within the public service. Now that sounds a bit of a technical thing, but actually all the government departments pretty much are people organisations. And so we need to make sure that we have really well supported and technically competent people who understand the business working in that human resources area. So I'm helping to drive that. But as I said, what I'm going to talk about mostly today is that leadership thing. The model of leadership we've had in the public service over the last 20, 25 years has been based very much around the accountability of individual chief executives and individual agencies to solve problems. And there's been some really great things that have occurred as a result of that. Clear accountabilities. For a while we were world leaders in state sector reform. The problem is, as our society becomes more diverse and more complicated, it gets beyond the capacity of an individual heroic chief executive or great agency to solve problems. Indeed, most of the big problems can't be solved by agencies working alone. They can't even be solved by government departments working together. They can only be solved by having agencies that are both collaborative but also connected with the wider community, in particular with their customers. And that's where the diversity thing comes in, which I'll get to shortly. But I guess a combination of the financial crisis, a new government coming in who was less interested in how the public service organised itself and much more focused on achieving results for customers, led over the last few years to thinking about a different model for leadership in the public service. A model that values collaboration as much or even more than it values individual accountability, where it is the norm to have leaders who have worked in a number of different agencies, where agencies organise themselves not around what makes sense to them, but what makes sense to their customers. And in particular, agencies that work together for common and collective goals. So what sort of leaders do you need to work in a system like that? Well, you need people who've got broad experience, who've worked in different agencies. You need to have people with different backgrounds who bring different perspectives to the table. Yes, you need to reward and value technical expertise, but you also need to recognise that the public service doesn't have all the answers. We actually need to have people who have strong networks, who know how to connect in with broad groups to share information. So a big part of my role is helping chief executives to develop leaders who have those sorts of skills. Now, some of the work we're doing, I'm saying, is a bit of a remedial end. People have already, like me, got to reasonably senior positions who need to be broadened out to have opportunities to work across different agencies. So we have a system of what's called career boards at the moment, which is where chief executives get together in their sectors and talk about who their emerging leaders are, to share information about them and to look for development opportunities. Also, a big part of my role is helping to broker shifts of people within different government agencies to broaden their experience. But one of the things that I'm also very keen to do more of is bring people from outside of the public service into the public service to see what it's like, and vice versa. I still unfortunately see ads for jobs in the public service, senior ones saying, it would be a great advantage to have, 15 plus years of public service experience. Well, that's not going to grow the diversity of thinking that we need. So, yeah, I've got a big focus around developing system leaders, but the other point is around diversity and ensuring that we have a public service that better matches the society that we're there to serve. Now, we've already seen some of the numbers, but I thought I'd just add a couple more, and I know we're not going to talk about Auckland today, we're talking about Wellington, but I guess as people know, over the last 20 years, and that's during that same period in which our state sector model that we've had up until now evolved, New Zealand society has changed in some pretty fundamental ways. As you know, the diverse Asian communities are growing in Auckland at a huge rate and across the whole country. 25% of the people of Auckland and 11% of New Zealanders identify as Asian in the latest census. You marry that up though with the public service figure. 7.6% of the public service identify as Asian, and only 2.3% of senior leaders are Asian. Now, we're lucky that we've got some great senior leaders here today, but I'm afraid there's probably not many more of them than we've got here. And that's a real problem, and it's a problem for two reasons, I think. Diversity more diversity at senior teams and throughout organisations will allow you to be more responsive to your customers, because if the people who are providing the services don't understand the perspectives, have different backgrounds than the people they're providing services to, you're going to have a mismatch. But secondly, and I think even more importantly, having diversity of perspectives around leadership tables and throughout organisations actually increases the quality of decision making. If you have a bunch of people with reasonably similar backgrounds and reasonably similar perspectives sitting around the table, you're going to get reasonably similar sort of decisions. If you get people who can bring different cultural backgrounds, different perspectives from overseas, even people who have just grown up in a different home, a different home environment than the rest of you around the table, you're going to get different perspectives and you're going to get better decisions as a result. So how do you develop that diversity? Well, an obvious way is, proactively trying to appoint more people from more diverse backgrounds. So one of the things that we're looking at is having a more proactive graduate program. So we look at but helping to develop and mentor people from an early stage in their career to think about themselves as members of a system, but also to look hard to broaden the net to get more people coming in at the front end. I talked about career boards. Well, we're setting up a dedicated career board in Auckland, which will have a focus around developing a cohort of senior leaders in Auckland, and it will have a particular focus on trying to get people with more diverse backgrounds in there. The other half of it, though, is to make sure that the people who are there at the moment, particularly those who don't come from necessarily diverse backgrounds, are able to, as we talked about before, better navigate the cultural environment we're in. We need a lot of help to do that, and I suspect the people who will be able to help us in the area around this table, or in this room. So, yeah, two big priorities. How can we get more people from different backgrounds and all levels of the public service? And you'll be able to give me some advice on that, I'm sure. But also, how can we improve the connections, the experiences, the range of perspectives that our current public service leaders have? So that's really what my job's about, and an obvious connection with this group. So again, I'm very grateful to be here. I guess I just want to leave with one final thought. The way we're progressing at the moment, where we only have 7% of our public service as people of Asian backgrounds and 2% of the leaders of Asian backgrounds, the public service is the much poorer for it. We are not only disconnecting with, or likely to be disconnecting with, a big part of the public we serve, but we're also losing the benefit of all of those different perspectives around the tables, and I think the quality of our decision making is going to suffer as a result. Now, I've outlined all of my challenges of my job. I haven't been that great on the solutions, but I would really very much like to talk to some of you later on about that. Kia ora koutou.